I didn't utter a single word when they served me with the eviction notice. I just slowly slid the 1923 water rights deed across the table. In my mind, I watched those 35 sprawling McMansions instantly turn into worthless lakefront property. The Willowbrook Estates. HOA genuinely thought they could steal my grandfather's farm while I was deployed in Afghanistan. These pompous suburban bureaucrats built their perfect little paradise on land they didn't own, complete with golf carts and tennis outfit Karens patrolling the streets. They didn't know I'm an Army Corps of Engineers veteran. They didn't know that Little Earth Dam on my property had been silently waiting 45 years for someone stupid enough to build directly downstream. The audacity of their theft was astounding, but I knew the feeling of satisfaction when the spillway gates opened and their luxury development got its first taste of a natural flash flood would be even sweeter. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 34, an Army Corps of Engineers specialist, and the third-generation owner of 47 acres of prime Texas land just outside Austin. We called my grandfather Pops, and he bought this place back in 1955 when Austin was still a quiet town. Pops believed in taking care of the land. In 1978, he built a simple, solid earth dam with the help of the Army Corps for flood control and to collect rainwater for our cattle. Being deployed twice to Afghanistan, specializing in water management in a war zone, taught me just how precious and volatile clean water is. While I was on my second tour, Pops passed away. The farm went into a trust managed by my sister, Sarah, who lives in California and knows zero about Texas land law. She made one huge, crucial mistake. She never actually looked at the tax assessment hour. Villain stepped onto the stage. Margaret Maggie Thornwell, 52, the HOA president. She's the kind of woman who drives a white BMW X7 and weaponizes her expensive tennis outfit. Maggie has that specific, passive-aggressive, Southern sweetness, the kind where she'll smile while expertly plunging a knife into your back. She's married to City Councilman Rick Thornwell, which explains her political clout and why she calls forcing out neighbors who don't fit her vision of neighborhood beautification. Initiative. I returned from deployment in August 2023, expecting to see the familiar rolling pastures. Instead, I found a suburban invasion. Concrete trucks, construction crews, and survey stakes covering my back 40. The foreman casually told me, "We got permits. This is Willowbrook Estates property now." When Officer Martinez showed up, he explained the HOA had filed an adverse possession claim while I was overseas. That's when Maggie rolled up in her golf cart, acting like a self-appointed land baron. "Your family abandoned this land, honey," she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. "We're just putting it to good use for the community." But the true gut punch wasn't just the land, it was the water. I found out her crew had illegally diverted the small creek that feeds Pop's Dam. The water level was dropping daily, erasing 45 years of careful water management. As I stood there watching the water recede, Maggie's parting shot echoed in my ears. "You should have stayed closer to home, soldier boy." That moment changed everything. This wasn't a dispute. It was war. My first mistake was hiring an overpriced lawyer who quoted me $85,000 just to challenge the zoning. While I was serving, Maggie's husband, Rick, had fast-tracked an emergency zoning modification, turning my family's agricultural land into a residential development zone. But my Army Corps training kicked in. I stopped paying the lawyer and started digging through county records like I was hunting for IEDs, and the treasure I found was explosive. I located Pops' original 1978 dam permits, which proved the structure was built with Federal Army Corps guidance, meaning federal jurisdiction that the local HOA could never override. The adrenaline surged, but then I found the ultimate secret: a 1923 water rights deed. My great-grandfather had purchased senior water rights to the entire watershed, rights older than the city itself. They weren't just stealing my property. They were stealing the entire area's water supply. Meanwhile, Maggie was playing the victim on the local news, dabbing her eyes while complaining about the dangerous dam, structure, and children's safety. She looked like the picture of suburban concern. I knew my counterattack had to be just as public but far more devastating. That dam looks ready to burst, and we have families living right downstream. That was Maggie on the local news, dabbing her eyes. Local news loves a drama, but they hate research. If they'd checked, they'd know Pops's dam had just passed inspection. But Maggie's real target was the neighborhood digital watch. Next door, she posted a vague but pointed warning about aggressive property disputes and unstable individuals in the area. In a small community, everyone knew the unstable individual was the recently returned veteran who owned the undeveloped land. The message was clear. Intimidation. I stood on my porch, counting the concrete trucks that rumbled past. They were running double shifts, racing to finish the houses before I could get a court injunction. Every new foundation pour was a ticking clock. And every night, the water level in Pops's dam dropped another inch due to their illegal diversion. That's when I called my old Army buddy Tony Riggs, who now works for the EPA Enforcement Division. Tony's advice was gold. If they're diverting a natural waterway without federal permits, that's a Clean Water Act violation. Since Pops's dam had federal jurisdiction, the penalties were catastrophic. I immediately started my own intelligence gathering. Trail cameras, time-stamped photos of every diversion, and flow measurements along the creek. My sister Sarah called from California, begging me to just take the money and walk away. But this wasn't about money. It was about the crunch of those construction boots on my grandfather's earth and the bitter taste of courthouse coffee that came with uncovering deep local corruption. Most of all, it was about the dam. Pops built it to be a source of life, and Maggie's crew was turning it into a decorative pond for her McMansions. I realized the courtroom wasn't my battlefield. This was going to be one with engineering. Maggie escalated her attack. She organized a neighborhood safety patrol. 3 HOA board members in matching polo shirts who set up a checkpoint at my entrance. They photographed every visitor and filed sheriff reports about suspicious activity. The harassment was relentless. Citations for loud music, unsightly structures, complaints about my 1962 farmhouse, and even environmental hazard reports about my septic system. But the real kick came when her husband, Rick, used his city council position to order a wellness check on me through Veteran Services. I was labeled a troubled veteran, struggling with readjustment issues. The social worker was apologetic, but I had to watch Maggie supervise the inspection from her golf cart. The synchronized bureaucratic assault followed. Building inspector, fire marshal, health department, and animal control all showed up on the same day, a regulatory SWAT team. Each one found minor, expensive violations. Rick's drinking buddy, the building inspector, declared my front porch needed $8,000 in foundation work. I recognized the tactic. The bureaucratic squeeze play used in war zones to overwhelm and force capitulation. But I had my own artillery. My phone calls to Tony Riggs at the EPA paid off. Tony confirmed the HOA had never filed the required wetlands assessment before redirecting Willow Creek. Federal law required environmental clearance, and the fines for such violations started at $50,000 per day. Meanwhile, my own research uncovered the Whitmore's deep corruption. Their entire development was built in a 100-year floodplain. To get insurance, the HOA's solution was to divert Willow Creek permanently and let the floodwaters pool on my property instead. This wasn't just civil fraud. This was federal mail fraud, a criminal offense. The deeper I dug, the more I realized Maggie had done this before, leaving a $2.3 million EPA fine behind her at her previous Houston HOA. Maggie's fear became desperation. She launched a smear campaign, organizing a petition to have my property condemned as a public nuisance and telling the local paper, "We can't have unstable individuals threatening our safety." But I was building alliances. I connected with other HOA victims online and found a pattern. Maggie's HOA had absorbed 6 smaller properties using identical tactics. I partnered with my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, whose family garden was dying, and Miguel Santos, whose farm had been rezoned out of existence. This was a systematic land grab. Then came the certified letter. The city was planning to seize my property through eminent domain for public safety. The hearing was in 2 weeks. Maggie's final move was a calculated photo op. 20 concerned mothers, holding children near my property line, capturing their worried faces against my menacing farmhouse. The headline read, "Troubled Veteran Blocks Community? Progress." Maggie's Strategy was now crystal clear. Take the lowball offer or lose everything. But Tony Riggs called again. The EPA was already running a federal investigation. Federal environmental crimes follow individuals, and Maggie's entire financial structure was tied to inflated property, values, and guaranteed water access. If those water rights reverted to me, their development would become financially underwater. I refused Maggie's final desperate $400,000 cash offer. While she was busy making enemies, I made allies, an environmental lawyer, Amanda Cross, and a coalition of downstream farmers. During a late-night reconnaissance, old Army habits die hard, I discovered the final beautiful secret. Pops's dam wasn't just a simple structure. The original 1978 design included an emergency spillway system with hydraulic gates that hadn't been opened since 1982, the hollow echo of water flowing through those underground spillway channels during my midnight tests told me everything I needed to know. What is Jake's next move? How does he use the hydraulic gates and the federal EPA investigation to deliver the final devastating blow? That dam looked ready to burst, but not randomly. It was designed for exactly this. I calculated the water volume needed to restore Willow Creek to its original path, 2.8 million gallons. Thanks to recent rainfall, the dam held 3.1 million. The math was perfect. Using my drone for aerial reconnaissance, I mapped the new home foundations. 5 houses were built directly in the historical flood channel. 3 more had illegal basements below the seasonal high water mark. The beautiful irony was that the crews had installed flimsy, decorative creek beds that couldn't handle actual water, while my spillway was Army Corps engineered for flood management. Then, Maggie made her fatal error. Her crew began installing permanent concrete barriers to completely block the original creek bed. This would permanently destroy the downstream ecosystem and render my spillway useless. But it gave me the ultimate justification for what I was about to do. The Weather Service was predicting heavy September rains, the perfect cover for emergency dam maintenance. As I stood at the spillway controls, Pops's journal entry about helping neighbors during a drought crystallized my decision. Time to open the gates. My relentless digging through dusty courthouse records uncovered a misfiled document that changed everything. The original 1978 agricultural flood management covenant for Pops's dam. The language was clear. Dam operators shall maintain natural seasonal flow patterns to preserve downstream agricultural water rights in perpetuity. This wasn't just permission to manage flooding. It was a legal obligation that superseded any HOA or city ordinance. Meanwhile, the legal team found the smoking gun. The HOA's insurance applications contained outright lies, claiming no seasonal flooding risk to secure $47 million in coverage. Here is your third knowledge nugget. When developers lie about environmental risks to get insurance coverage, that's federal mail fraud, carrying mandatory prison time. The corruption was staggering. Rick Thornwell wasn't just the contractor, he was the primary investor, and he had never recused himself from a single city council vote that benefited his project. My blood boiled when the EPA confirmed the creek diversion had killed the entire population of Guadalupe bass, a protected species. They weren't just stealing land and water. They were destroying an entire ecosystem. The financial evidence was the true kill shot. The construction loans were secured by fraudulent environmental assessments. If those senior water rights reverted back to me, the entire development would violate federal lending regulations. Banks could demand immediate full repayment of $12 million in construction loans. Reading Pops's 1980 journal entry, opened spillway today, helped the Santos farm and 3 others get through dry spell. That's what neighbors do. I realized Maggie hadn't just stolen land. She had stolen 45 years of community cooperation. The pressure was intense. If I waited for the legal system, natural, uncontrolled flooding from the predicted heavy rains would happen anyway, causing real damage. By acting now, I could control the timing and intensity. A controlled spillway release would demonstrate natural flood patterns without endangering anyone, while legally proving the HOA development violated federal law. This wasn't revenge. It was restoring the natural order. I immediately assembled my team. Amanda Cross, environmental lawyer, filed an emergency agricultural water rights restoration motion, arguing that the dam covenant required me to maintain seasonal flooding. Tony Riggs, EPA, guaranteed federal investigators would witness our natural flooding demonstración. Miguel, Santos and Mrs. Chen provided historical testimony and community credibility. My technical plan was pure Army Corps, a controlled release starting at 6 a.m., peaking at 10 a.m. The volume was precisely calculated to expose their illegal concrete barriers without causing structural damage. We controlled the narrative. I posted warning signs 24 hours in advance and notified the volunteer fire department. Amanda contacted investigative reporters. Mrs. Chen became our intelligence network on HOA gossip. While I was rebuilding the spillway controls with modern hydraulic systems, Amanda was coordinating with insurance, regulators, and banking officials with our evidence of fraud. The beauty was in the perfect, synchronized timing. As storm clouds gathered, I made the final decision. Time to honor Pops' legacy and open those gates. The stage is set. What happens when Jake finally opens the hydraulic gates and the water rushes toward Willowbrook Estates? The Weather Service confirmed heavy rains in 72 hours. Amanda scheduled the federal environmental inspection for the same week. Miguel arranged for the agricultural extension agent to document downstream benefits. It was a perfect storm of nature, federal oversight, and community support, all converging at the right moment. Knowing Maggie's psychology, I prepared for her predictable responses: emergency HOA meetings, media smears, and a restraining order. Amanda drafted preemptive legal defenses for every single expected attack. Evidence preservation was crucial. I compiled comprehensive photo and video, documentation of the illegal creek, diversion, and recorded testimony from affected farmers. Amanda secured everything in federal court filings for legal protection. Meanwhile, Amanda launched the economic warfare. She tipped off state banking regulators about construction loan irregularities, contacted the Texas Attorney General about the insurance fraud, and prepared a civil RICO lawsuit alleging a pattern of racketeering. Knowledge nugget. Coordinated regulatory pressure from multiple agencies forces rich defendants to settle faster than individual lawsuits because they can't fight on all fronts. The final equipment check was underway. The smell of WD-40 and machine oil filled the evening air. Pops had built this system to last, but Maggie's desperation reached new levels. My trail cameras caught her hired private security, tactical gear wannabes trying to sabotage the hydraulic lines with concrete mix at 2 jaws. AM Deputy Rodriguez, tipped off by Tony Riggs, was waiting in the shadows and made a beautiful arrest. The security guards claimed they were protecting community infrastructure, but it's hard to explain quickset concrete at 2 a.m. Maggie's media blitz was even more frantic. On the Austin Morning Show, she played the victim, trembling. Veterans need mental health support, not weapons. This man is threatening to wash away children's homes. Rick provided expert testimony about catastrophic dam failure risks, but my surveillance was paying off. I documented every sabotage attempt. Tony revealed that federal investigators had been wiretapping Rick's office phone as part of a separate corruption probe. The ultimate legal assault came next. Rick fast-tracked an emergency restraining order hearing for 6 a.m. before his golf buddy, Judge Henry Walsh. Maggie organized a neighborhood safety patrol of 20 residents with folding chairs and protect our kids.